Let's go. New York, go. Stand up. CTEJ. Chat. Replay gang. Diehards worldwide. We here. The New York Knicks dominated the Cleveland Cavaliers tonight at MSG. Like we said, EJ, we got back home. We got comfortable. We got home cooking. And tonight was a party, a celebration. Let's talk about it. How we feeling, buddy?
I'm feeling as good as those people leaving Madison Square Garden right now, the 19,000 individuals. Let's take a couple out who might be Cleveland family members, Cleveland friends, but there are approximately 19,000 people leaving the exits on 32nd and 7th Avenue, 32nd and 8th Avenue who are flooding out to the E train, the A train, the C train. Shout out to the 1 train, the 2 train, the 3 train, the LIRR. All of New York City stand up. This was a great, great game. And the best part, CT, my brother, is the game got progressively better. Progressively better. By the time we hit the fourth quarter, this was a feel-good game that was not, it was beyond reach. There was no question about it. So I am feeling good. Salute to everyone in the chat. So salute to my boy CT. How do you feel, man?
Floating, man. Buzzing. The streets are buzzing. And right now, we deserve this first and foremost. That's what I want to say. It's not just about tonight. The chat's going to show out tonight. We're going to have fun, talk about it, and plenty more left in this series. But this is what we have been waiting for, ladies and gentlemen. That moment. We got a new young generation of Knicks fans, EJ, that haven't experienced this buzz.
Yeah.
And it's been a long time for us. And it's like an addiction. I want to experience it more and more and more. Playoff basketball, it was great at MSG.
Yeah.
The noise, the defense was back. The Oregon Celebrity Row fan base worldwide just enjoyed this night. We'll talk about our initial impressions of the game, but yeah, we started out really well. Shout out to RJ Barrett. Shout out
definitely
to
shout out.
5 players in double figures, shared the ball tonight. No one really needed to dominate tonight, but our defense got it done for me. What did you see?
I mean, we have to, and I will especially applaud RJ Barrett. Shout out to Gerard who said that from the very jump in the chat. RJ Barrett, the first half of the game was really the engine that kept this team afloat. It seemed as if both offensives were struggling, missing wide open shots, not being able to hit an ocean with the basketball. But there was a point by the tail end of the second quarter, RJ had approximately 30% of the Knicks offense. So that's indicative of the kind of start that he had and why he was so instrumental to the Knicks getting this win. It was a blowout, but the way that the first and second quarters played out, it didn't seem like it was going to be a blowout. But we have to applaud, and I'm singularly going to applaud RJ when Rowan Barrett tonight. So salute to you, my friend.
Yeah, stand up. When we needed someone to stand up early in the game, when it was even, that first quarter, I mean, the offense wasn't great early in this game. We ended up finishing strong, no doubt. But this was a game early on. It was a feeling out game, first at MSG. And boy, did the Cleveland Cavaliers know what it's like now to be the road team at MSG in a playoff series right now. And it's like we made a chess move. Cleveland made their chess move. We've made an impressive chess move tonight. And it's now on to Cleveland to answer with one more game in MSG. But this was, let me ask you with the first question of tonight, was this a bigger smoking on Cleveland, or was the Cleveland smoke in game 2 bigger?
No, by far, this game is bigger. This game is much bigger because when you're the team with home court advantage and you can make all of the excuses that, game 1 was a surprise game, was a trap game, You can make excuses such as, players were rusty because they hadn't played for some time. Uh, not every fan, not every pundit, but there were a number of pundits, like including Jeff Van Gundy, who thought that Cleveland was going to win this series very easily. Um,
Yeah,
I hemmed and hawed and said that this series was going 7 games and Cleveland was probably going to take it. So once Cleveland won game 2 and did so handily, for some, this reestablished the order of the universe, the rightful order of the universe. That Cleveland was going to might be able to handle the Knicks and do so in a dominant fashion. But this game has once again changed the flow of the series. It's changed expectations, and it's not the Knicks winning by 5. This was the Knicks handily defeating the Cleveland Cavaliers. And so here's the big thing, and we're probably going to talk more about this later on. The Knicks have won a game where Donovan Mitchell goes for almost 40 points, and the Knicks have won a game in this series where they've blown out the Cleveland Cavaliers. So if you're Cleveland, your psyche, your mental makeup is really being challenged as we speak. And it doesn't look like Cleveland has that mental second or third gear. There seems to be something about this squad where this might be a huge punch that might do it.
yeah, yeah. And first things first, I'll say, going in, I thought our strength was our depth, and this is the first game. Finally, it took the third game for all our role players to have a solid game, or a decent game where nobody was really missing, and it took the third game, and we are now 5 wins and 2 losses against Cleveland on the season. So in terms of a fake series, a fake playoff series throughout the regular season, we've won the series already, 5 wins to 2. One more game in MSG as well, and I think we will get Cleveland's best punch. Game 4, we will, but if we win that one, man,
It's over.
I feel like it's over. How do you
Yeah.
feel? Do you feel like it's over if we win the
I mean,
next?
you raised an interesting point. Like, when at first I was just looking at the series in and of itself without in isolation. But
Mm.
when you look at the stat that you just threw out there, that the series is now 5-2. Just excuse me 1 second, allergies.
No, you're good. Salute Will, salute chat. Let's go.
Yeah, sorry about that. Shout out to all the allergy sufferers right now.
Hmm.
It is horrible in New York City. Um, if you're an allergy sufferer, just say it in the chat. But when you put it from that perspective, like the idea of this series not being currently 2-1, but this series, if you include postseason and regular season, being 5-2, boy, does that color and shape our expectations for Game 3. Boys, does that shape how Cleveland might be looking at this next game?
Hmm.
I agree with Drew. I do expect for Game 4 to be a dogfight, but man, I mean, there, there were a lot of moments during this Game 3, that you could see Cleveland quit a little bit. And the body language, some of the huddles interactions, if you took a look at it during the broadcast, there were some moments where you could see that some of the mental fight, it wasn't quite there for the entire roster. So it's going to be fascinating to see what happens Game 4.
Yeah, real fascinating. It could be the game of the series, like in terms of intensity. But you know what? After, we'll talk about and chop up this win at nauseam, but we still have gears we can go to. This was by no means a perfect game. I mean, just looking at the box score, like nobody scored more than 21 points. It was just a collective team effort. But our defense, like, shout out, 79 points, 79 to 99, 1999. This was a throwback.
Yeah, this was definitely a throwback. Some people on Twitter, Nick's Twitter, were
Mm,
talking about how this was a throwback to the 90s. I mean, those first 2 quarters felt like it was JV basketball at
mm,
times. Like this was junior high, pee wee basketball. because it was so difficult for people to make a shot. Um, but I think the tenor of the game was really determined. Like the context of the game was already from the very beginning with when you see like the coverage focuses on so many of the Knicks alumni, and you see so many Knicks of the
Mm.
1990s to have the shot of John Starks, Latrell Sprewell, Allen Houston in the building, and obviously salute to Bernard King in the 80s, and of course the legend, the last person to win a championship for our Knicks, Walt Clyde Frazier there. Um, that to me set the tenor of the organization understanding that this means business. And this idea of not only wanting to win this game, but let's keep it 100. Let's keep it absolutely 100. And shout out to Buzz the Beater. I saw your comment. And Michael Eric Dyson is one of my heroes. Um, I saw that. Dr. Reverend Michael Eric Dyson. Um, One of the things that was really impressive about tonight's game was Jalen Brunson. He has not only dog in him, but there are ways in which you can see this. He's taking some aspects of this series quite personally, and so that will to win rather, is quite obvious, and it's transcending the entire series, and it's really making its mark on the series that this is really personal, and that he and a few other players want to will not only the Knicks to win, but to really make a statement.
Yeah, you said it. And I've got Brunson's chart on screen since you mentioned the man's name. And Bonson chimes in on timely point. Surgical. He did not hit a 3-pointer tonight, 0 of 4. But look at that. I was talking to Bill Daughtry. This is Brunsonville between the restricted area and the foul line, top of the key. Talk about surgical, like Bonson says. What do you see on that from JB's game? 10 of 18, even though he missed 0 for 4 from deep.
Listen, he doesn't need to do a lot to do a lot. Um, One of the things that we talked about when we were doing our our whole predictions is we just talked about how stealthy he is. We talked about how smart he is, and
Mm,
again, we talked about how there's a manner in which what he could do, it may not be point for point, but it could nullify some of the things that Donovan Mitchell would do in a
mm,
series, in a game. And what you're seeing is that he's he is he's able to do things consistently and steadily and in the right moments that just really proves how good of a player this guy. This series is not just about the Knicks. This series is about elevating Jalen Brunson's position in the basketball landscape of the NBA. At this point next year, it's my full expectation that people should be discussing him for major postseason awards. He should be in the running for All Star nominations. This series, I think some people may have thought last season was a fluke. Nah,
no,
he's the real deal. He's the real deal.
absolute real deal, man. Talking about carrying us steady hand at MSG. All the role
Hmm.
players stepped up. And the next gentleman that I'll bring up his chart on screen, Rowan Barrett Jr. First quarter, he was 8 of 12 for tonight. I had
Yeah.
Coach Nick B-ball breakdown messaging me middle of the game, who wasn't watching the game but saw the box score, and he was like, "May I ask what's up with RJ Barrett?" And I was like, "Home cooking, open
Yeah.
shots," and he hit 3 of 6, 50%. We talked about it. Who could step up from the Knicks and hit threes? It was Barrett tonight, plus 10, 19 points, man. I'm so happy for the young man. What are your thoughts on Barrett's night?
My thoughts are this goes back to our conversation after game one, where we talked about, or rather game two, where we talked about how if we had any aspirations of the Knicks really locking in, we needed one of the three younger players to step up. And one of the things that we definitely
Mm,
talked about after game one was After the Knicks won that particular game, we asked the question of what would happen if one of the three, RJ, Quentin Grimes, or Emmanuel Quickly, played a more efficient game, played a better game, played a
Yeah.
more prominent role in the offense. And everyone did what they were supposed to do. Everyone else did what they were supposed to do. But if one of those three players played a more substantive role in the night's performance, imagine what that could look like. Well,
Oh,
ladies
yeah.
and gentlemen, this is what it looked like. So it really, and I've been critical of RJ. I have no problem admitting that, but the man deserves his flowers tonight. Really super efficient, and again, single-handedly kept the Knicks in the game, allowed for us to have a slight margin the first half. And without RJ Barrett, I don't know what the game looks like in the first half, and what that eventually led to in the second half. But if this is the performance, if we can get a performance like this, particularly because we don't know the status of Quentin Grimes, this could be a real big difference.
Yeah, it's one of the reasons I was critical of RJ too, and so many fans were. But it's one of the reasons, EJ, I said I wasn't overreacting to game two, because we never saw what our role players and our other players would look like at MSG. You can't just evaluate players on the road in a playoff hostile environment. That's
Hmm.
literally the toughest environment any player
Yeah,
can play in. And I think it
absolutely.
was slightly unfair to just judge all of these Knicks just after two games. But what we're going to see after tonight and after game four is a collective two apiece on home and away. And we can then fully evaluate what guys look like. And yes, RJ would need to step up on the road, but he handled his business tonight, as did the rest of the Knicks. And I thought RJ Barrett's defense early was pretty solid. And Emmanuel
Yeah,
Quickly's defense, I really want to shout out IQ's defense all night. You could tell that was the first main adjustment that Tom Thibodeau did. He had IQ guarding the high pick and roll, and he was excellent. Getting around the picks and switching. I thought our pick and roll defense was excellent
absolutely,
tonight. And
absolutely.
Barrett's 8 rebounds. He got 2 offensive, 3 assists, just 2 turnovers, plus 10, 19. So yeah, what did you see from Barrett's D and the rest of the team's defense tonight?
Defense was definitely locked in. I mean, particularly as they were applying pressure to Garland and Mitchell, it was so obvious that when you had that triumvirate
Mm,
of of Barrett, Hart, IQ, there was a concerted effort on the defensive end to, as best as possible, lock down Cleveland's backcourt, and it was really, really transparent. And they did what they were supposed to do. And
yeah.
so this is why I think you can't really discuss this game without discussing RG's effort on both sides of the court. Obviously there were moments that were flashier. For example, Josh Hart with steals and outlet pass, not outlet passes, but alley oops
Mm,
to Obi. But again, it all started with RJ, his efficiency, and I think this is why like a lot of us have such high expectations for RJ, is because when you put a night like this together, where everything just seems to come together, and to do it with so few turnovers, this is what made tonight so impressive. So he deserves like all the stars tonight, all the flowers as well.
yeah, it was kind of a battle between Okoro, Brunson, and Barrett, but Barrett was hitting his threes really,
Hmm.
and two at the top of the key. That's not his best area, EJ, and then one in the corner. Um, the Garden, like AC says, salute turned up a notch. Like we were just so amped, hyped for this all
Oh yeah,
night as we should have been. But man, did we give them a New York welcome.
absolutely,
It was a great
absolutely.
night overall. Buzzer Beater says we nearly played 90s type D. Um, and we didn't even really get dirty at all. There was no bloodshed. It was just perfectly executed, legal, clamp you down defense. Welcome to the New York City Gritty Committee.
Ha ha, Boris. No, it was really. I mean, I was really proud of what the Garden sounded like
Mm,
at the very opening of the game. It wasn't, you didn't even have the tip go up yet, and you already heard chance of defense. This is, again, for those of you guys who are of a certain age who remember what it was like during the 90s playoff runs. And I'm going to say this, and this is not like, old guy in the room moment, but the volume of Madison Square Garden in the 90s versus the volume during the 2012, 2013 seasons, it's two totally different volumes.
Yeah.
I think the most that we might get in terms of being comparable to that 90s vibe was Linsanity. But even then, there was something uniquely different because of the stakes that were involved in the 90s run. So, like, tonight was really, really that kind of level of excitement and electricity. It was the kind of electricity that jumps through the screen and you feel it. You feel it, you see it. You saw people already standing up, and the game started. The game hadn't started yet. People were already standing in the arena. There were very few people who were distracted by their phones. There was a level of intensity that made Madison Square Garden tonight a true home court advantage. And I think that can't be diminished. That cannot be diminished when you talk about, Cleveland's performance. So thank you to the 19,063, I think is the number at MSG tonight.
Yeah, they delivered. They showed up as the squad did, and overall, like looking at Cleveland's picture as well. I said tonight in the chat, bigger squad won. Ricky Rubio. They tried to squeeze in some Ricky Rubio minutes. It
Hmm.
backfired. He got a couple of fouls. I even saw all the Cavs content creators saying, "Man, this might be the last we see of Ricky Rubio in the series because he could not give them anything." Karis LeVert was giving them
Yeah,
sort of the best Karis LeVert could give, and there was
yeah,
really no one else they could turn to. I mean, our pick and roll defense clamp you down. They don't have enough scoring at MSG. If we're playing this kind of defense, EJ, I don't see enough scoring coming from this squad with Isaac Okoro, Jetty Osman hampered by the ankle, unable to play Ricky Rubio. If Karras, Garland, and Spider all go off, that's not enough, I don't feel. And five Knicks in double figures. Let's see this same team effort move the ball in game four, and I think we should be the favorite.
and that's not to say, and someone already said this in the chat, and I'll find who it is who said this, and and I texted you this as well too. That's not to say anything of Darius Garland's status for Game Four. These playoffs have been really a who's who of who can get an ankle sprain and who can cause anxiety for their fan base because of a rolled ankle or because of an ankle sprain. If all of us have played some basketball before, and if you've played enough basketball, you know what it feels like to get that ankle sprain and how painful that ankle sprain is. And obviously, these are finely tuned athletes, so I'm not even talking about my glory days in high school. But those hurt, and so we saw them working on Darius Garland for quite some time. I think it was about
Mm,
3 or 4 minutes of
yep.
game time where they were operating on him, working on him, trying to get him, maintain that looseness. And if you paid any attention to him, and this is when I texted CT during the game, he was actually doing things during the course of play to try to remain loose. So that's something for us to be aware of because if Cleveland is going to struggle to produce offense, and Darius Garland is going to be less than 100% or less than 90%, I can't foresee Karis LeVert having another game like this back to back. And you've already fired the Isaac Okoro bullet. You've already fired the Ricky Rubio bullet. You already
Mm.
fired the Danny Green bullet.
They
What's
might
left?
they might have to go back to Dean Wade, just try to stretch the floor. But a great point also about AC. Uh, if Randle can go off, even play solid, and everyone else does their job, I think Game Four is still going to be incredibly difficult for Cleveland. I think we're going to have to see a crazy game from Spider and Garland to defeat us in Game Four because I'm going to feel like we got so much confidence now. We're buzzing. Uh, Quickly got a dose of seeing the ball go through the net. Barrett got a dose of seeing the ball go through the net. Uh, Blessings and prayers up to Quet and Grimes. Hopefully, But the positive thing, EJ, is looks like Josh Hart was not was not hampered by an ankle really tonight.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
Josh Hart was excellent. By far his first or second best game in this series. 4 of 5, 29 minutes. Was 3 of 4 from the line. Hit 2 of 2 from deep. Plus 13, 13 points, 6 rebounds, 2 steals. Stand up, Josh Hart, man. Built for the playoffs.
Definitely built for the playoffs. And Jeff Van Gundy brought up this point.
Mhm.
Um, if Quentin Grimes is hurt, if let's say he has to just miss a game or so, um, Miles McBride might be perfectly suited for this series because if
Mm.
you want to like lock down and ensure that Randle gets enough touches so that he feels like he's more in rhythm. Because let's not forget, he did miss quite a number of games, and there's
Yeah.
something about being rhythm, being in your rhythm. And Buzzer Beater, we're definitely gonna get to that point soon. That's a really good question. We want to ensure that RJ feels like he's in rhythm. We want to ensure that IQ feels like he's in rhythm. And obviously you want to ensure that Jalen Brunson gets as many of his shots up as possible. That's like four players that you have to like try to satisfy their shots and their touches. And so, like we've talked about just recently, Cleveland is that kind of team where perhaps it actually works out that you have a more defensive mind in the rotation if Quentin can't go for Game 4, to have Miles McBride as part of your rotation. So
Yeah.
yeah, this is going to be a really interesting kind of swing game in terms of
Mhm.
Game 4. Like, if we win Game 4, but if we lose Game 4, I can imagine the anxiety increasing again and it being palpable.
I'm feeling so confident in Game 4. I think the crowd, the hype is going to grow even more to get to
Yeah,
the point where we have a chance to go up 3 games to 1 at MSG in a first round series for the first time in a decade against the higher seed with our solid squad ready to ball out. I cannot wait. We'll talk about it. Streets are buzzing. Club that like button for the Knicks are up 2-1. CT with his man EJ and the chat rocking out. Now buzzer beater with the super chat. Salute,
that's a great question.
appreciate you, man. Talk about buzzer. You got the streets buzzing. Why are there so many
Yes.
ankle sprains, EJ?
That's a good question. I mean, we saw what happened with obviously Julius Randle. We saw what happened with Josh Hart. We saw what happened tonight with Darius Garland. And we've
Mm,
seen it throughout the leagues. We've seen it throughout the playoffs. We saw a little bit of this issue last night with Joel Embiid. I think part of it is that, when I was watching basketball in the 1990s, uh, players did not necessarily crowd the same space. You had a lot more space where you were. There just seems to be many more bodies in today's game in the same locations. Um,
yeah.
you can have five players out, as opposed to, or four players out, one player in the paint, as opposed to where and how players used to set, in the 1990s and the 1980s. Additionally, like we also see, like, there's just something about uh, the floors at times. There
Mm,
seems to be a lot more slick spots. So even in tonight's game, again, I was paying attention to Josh Hart. Maybe it's the way he plays, but this man seems every time he's on the floor, he seems to be slipping. I'm not sure if it's the moisture. I'm not sure it's because some of these arenas are combo arenas. For example, MSG is obviously the home of the Knicks and the Rangers. And so is it the ice underneath the floor that causes some moisture, especially as we enter into the spring? That might be an equation. That might be part of the equation. But it is concerning the amount
mm.
of ankles, the ankle rolls that we're seeing in the game, and what that might do to a legitimate playoff
Oh,
team's
oh,
chances of
oh,
advancing. It's really concerning. CT, what are your thoughts?
yeah. Yeah, we're seeing it all over the league. I love what you said. My thoughts to Buzz's question. I think intensity when the intensity goes up, players are changing movements a lot, back and forth. trying to get that edge, trying to get that head start on the defender, twisting, turning, and
Hmm.
also their mind sometimes goes faster than their body, right? When you're playing under that kind of intensity, you're anxious, all of those things. Sometimes your mind is trying to tell your body, no, quickly, get to that spot, but your body can't keep up. So then you end up rolling your ankle, or
Yeah.
you try to jump higher, and so when you fall down, you land on someone's feet. So it's just it's the point where you're at the pinnacle of intensity. You're at that peak, at the apex,
Yeah.
and I think some people's ankles just bodies can in general can give way. But yeah, man, the New York Knicks up 2 games to 1. The bench stepped up, right? The chat's buzzing. We got Divine Knicks Real Talk, Sharp Hours. Salute, guys. Appreciate you. Enjoy, lap it up, soak it up. I can imagine, man, New York City will be buzzing, all the parties. If you're going out for a late meal,
Yeah.
early morning breakfast is going to taste better. We have not been in this situation for a long, long time, EJ. What does it mean to you personally now to be where we're at?
It means a lot. Before this like leaves my mind too. Like one more thing to
Mm,
Buzzer's question, and then I'll get to that question too. Um, the other big difference we see too as a part of the evolution of the game
mm,
is there's a lot more of an emphasis on charges and drawing charging calls. So you're
mm.
seeing a lot more like this sliding in or this last second, let me contort and twist to draw a charging foul. And so like I think that's also adding to the stress on ankles. And it's almost like at this point, I can imagine the league and the league office trying to say, okay, either this off season, next off season, within the next 2 or 3 years, there might be more of an emphasis on really doing something in terms of like the charging plays because I
Yeah,
understand it's really indicative of players trying to demonstrate their hustle, but it's also clogging up the lane and making it unsafe for players who are attempting a spectacular play or attempting to get to the rim. It's leading to plays where players are falling, or sometimes they're even like acting or like it's a little concerning what's happening now because it's becoming more and more of an obsession of teams and players. Um, do you have anything you wanted to piggyback on that?
no, you hit. I think I just hope we see the best players out there. That's what CT wants to see. Uh, I hate injuries, but I hate injuries at the worst times.
Yeah,
And I really hope Quentin Grimes because hope it's nothing too serious. It just seems like a contusion. So um,
yeah,
and this series could still swing on another injury. You know,
yeah, yeah,
knock on wood, but let's capitalize. I will say that.
yeah. But hey, New York City right now.
Mm.
Shout out to all of our Muslim brothers and sisters, Eid Mubarak to you guys, those who are celebrating. So where I'm at right now, lots of fireworks celebrating the holiday. But in my mind, it's also to celebrate this glorious, glorious Knicks win tonight. So like I think New York City there's something that's happening where a lot of us who are sports fans, a lot of us who are Yankees fans, Mets fans, Knicks fans, Rangers fans, Devils fans, Islanders fans, Giants fans, Jets fans, Brooklyn. You really represent the Knicks. Um,
Oh yeah.
it's a good time now to be a fan of professional sports. Hey, shout out to the Liberty too. Like I'm excited to go check out a Liberty game because listening to Sabrina Ionescu and some of the offseason acquisitions, and the Knicks
Mm.
have the ability to really energize New York City right now. And I just think it's exciting because if the Knicks win this series, which again, when I came into this, I was like, I wanted to say, I wanted the words to come out of my mouth, but if the Knicks win this series without Donovan Mitchell and all of the drama that the offseason was about, this entire offseason, that is a massive, massive statement. Massive
Yeah,
statement.
no doubt. This team's overcome a lot this
Yeah.
season. And speaking of that, another super chat from our guy, Buzzer Beater. Man, I've been harping on this all season long, man. You knew when you asked
Yeah.
this question, it's gonna fire me up because man, not only is there so many similarities to 1999, I'm kind of thinking like Eastern Conference Finals is in our path. If we get through Cleveland, of course, one series at a time. But I'll
Mm,
start by saying, and then I'll get your thoughts. To Buzz's point, Tom Thibodeau, first and foremost. Tibbs was here in 1999, and this is why he wanted to come back to New York. He said, "Man, there's no better place to win than New York City." When we were relevant, like you said, reference the Rangers, 1994, 1999. I was in high school, and Tom Thibodeau's here. But the identity of this team, it's not finesse, it's grittiness.
yeah.
That's another tick to 1999. I do think the Cleveland Cavaliers were the more finesse team coming in. We are more gritty. We rebound. We lock you down. We're tougher. Um, we try to persevere through toughness, adversity, and I think we probably won't go down in this series in terms of like um, trailing the Cleveland Cavaliers, but I do think we're going to win this series with our traits like 1999, which is rebounding um, and grind you out. We were a higher scoring team, Buzzer, EJ, throughout the season. Tonight we only scored 99 points, but we won still in a blowout.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm.
Um, the '99 team. This is a team I remember very well. Um, this is a team that's right in my wheelhouse. Um, the similarities is that the team, the '99 team, was it was a change in how the Knicks were playing historically. Um, by the
Mm.
98 '99 season, because we have to remember 99 is also like the lockout season. So the Knicks played the entire league played far fewer games. They did not play 82 games. I think they all played a 50 game season because the
Yep.
lockout lasted until like January, I think December, January. Shout out to Patrick Ewing for being the head of the players union back then. Um, One of the things that took place, because this was towards the tail end of Patrick Ewing's career. So 99, I think this is actually like the second to last season because I think he was traded in 2000. But at this point, the team was moving away from Ewing as being the focal point of the offense. Plus, he was getting injured more and more. So this is really where you started to see Allen Houston become a focal point in the offense. You started seeing Latrell Sprewell become more of a focal point in the offense. And this is kind of what's happening with the Knicks right now, in that there's more of an evolution that's been happening in terms of its offensive makeup, and that being spearheaded by Jalen Brunson, and that it's not necessarily like a top 20, top 10 player that's leading it, as had been happening with the Knicks prior to '99. Patrick Ewing, if you guys, if you're of a certain age, you may not know how great Patrick Ewing was. Patrick Ewing, top 50 basketball player, top 75 basketball player. But by '99, there was already a transition to the game. And so you're seeing something happening that's very similar in that the Knicks may not necessarily have a top 10 talent, but what they're doing that's very similar to '99 is the sum of the parts is really adding up to be something that's really intriguing.
It is, yeah. And hitting on some stats for tonight, right? Points in the paint. The New York Knicks 56 to Cleveland 48. So 1 points in the paint, fast break points 7 to 15 in New York's favor. Doubled them. Tick, tick. Turnovers. New York Knicks had 14, but Cleveland had 20. Forced the Cleveland Cavaliers to 20 turnovers. Stand up right now. And the biggest lead of the game was 27 points to Cleveland's 4 points, their biggest lead of the game.
Can you say
So
that again?
27 points, the biggest lead of the night for the New York
Wow.
Knicks to Cleveland's 4 points, their biggest lead, right? This was a true tough road game for the Cleveland Cavs. They're going to go back to their hotel, whatever, sorry as bleep, and they've got some soul searching because I don't think their squad, right, it's not looking good for Cleveland rebounding in game 4, I'm going to say, because again, Spider, Garland, Karis LeVert tried their best, but if our defense goes to another level, which we know it can, it's going to be a wrap, fam. It's going to be a wrap.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Um,
What are your
you
thoughts on
know,
the stats?
I mean, this what's scary is that the Knicks were not
Hmm.
firing on all cylinders. Rather, that's the axiomatic expression. The Knicks weren't firing on all cylinders tonight because we just saw IQ start to get a little bit of a feel.
Yep.
So those statistics, if you get that game, if you get that game that's similar to what the Knicks were like the last 2 or 3 weeks of the season, where you get an IQ who's more similar to the groove that he was in the last 2 or 3 weeks of the season, it's game over. It's checkmate because again, like there's just something that seems to be off about Cleveland, and this game really could have gotten even more out of hand without
Mm.
a Karis LeVert, resurrection. As
Yeah.
Clyde Frazier would say, it's like Lazarus, appearing from the out of the grave, you know. Um, but if like you think about it, like that was more of an anomaly. Like how many games does Karis LeVert have that's like that, where he's like just cooks for an entire half? That I would not. If I were a betting man, I would not imagine that he would have that kind of half
Mm.
again, game 4. So that's Cleveland.
And
Cleveland has some soul searching to do.
yeah, and we look at our two heads of the snake with Randle and Brunson, right? Pretty solid, but Randle can still have that big outburst game, burst out game, you know. 11 points tonight, Randle, plus 19. But
Yeah.
Jalen Brunson, 21 points. We see his chart on screen, was living in Brunsonville, but he did not hit a three-pointer. So if those two play better, the same, slightly better, and the role players step up, right, 99 points, holding Cleveland to 79, uh, beaten up, right, struggling with their lack of depth now. And I said, as the series goes along, it's going to favor the Knicks more and more because we have more soldiers. We can go down the production line quickly tonight. Give us your thoughts on Emmanuel quickly and his defense in his 23 minutes was plus 27, the highest of the entire team.
Well, yeah, that it begins and ends right there. Like when you're talking about plus 27,
Mm.
when you talk about the effort, um, like what I like about the effort tonight is when you have that ability to really make an imprint on the game without having to force a lot of it.
Mm.
Um, I'm going to keep it real short with quickly. I think the takeaway from quickly is the intelligence to, like, I think it was the second or third, the second quarter where the Knicks were starting to create a little bit of separation, and quickly, as he normally would do at the Garden, when he tries these heat check threes, and for some reason he decided, you know what, I'm not going to do it. That was the mark of I'm going to play within myself, and I know I'm contributing in other ways that may not necessarily appear on the stat line. That to me
Yeah,
was the epitome of Emmanuel Quigley's game tonight.
yeah, on point, EJ. Yeah, really under control. And I like his minutes distribution. 23 minutes was 4 of 6, 2 of 3 from deep. We really did get the 3-point shooting we needed in terms of Barrett going 50% from three, quickly going 2 of 3, even better. and without Brunson hitting that three, and Quentin Grimes not getting a three out of him. So really, yeah, more guys to step up at home. And again, I said to you off air before we started tonight, and to chat, I think we unfairly evaluated the entire Knicks team after two road games, not considering how we would look at home. You know,
Yeah,
I think
yeah,
you need to look at the team at home and on the road before you can fully evaluate. Because now we're seeing what Cleveland's role players look like at MSG, right? They
yeah,
look like straight
mm,
garbage.
yeah, yeah,
Um, yeah,
yeah.
it's easier to play defense with the raucous crowd chanting for you, screaming, shouting, hollering, everything. The air ball, every time they had a shot clock violation or an air ball, I could hear it all the way from Australia.
Yeah, no, it was definitely it's what we said game one. I think this is a repeat to a certain extent of what we talked
Mm.
about game one, where we talked about what's concerning is that the Knicks won game one and they won game three, and it wasn't a perfect game. It was far from a perfect
Oh,
game,
say
and,
that
and
again.
yeah, it's concerning if you're Cleveland. You're concerned, or you should be concerned, if you're a Cleveland fan, if you're a Cleveland roster, if you're a basketball analyst, you should be concerned that the Knicks were able to do what they did, and they did not play anything near a perfect game. Game one, as we talked about, the trifecta, the trio, the triumvirate of a R.J. Barrett, Quentin Grimes, and Emmanuel Quickly, we were concerned about where they were, and we on this show on Knicks Buzz, we talked about like, hey, imagine what would have happened if they played a more efficient game, if just one of them played a more efficient game. Obviously, the Knicks lost game two, but when we're looking at this kind of game where the Knicks win by 20,
Mm.
and we look at Julius Randle's stat line, which doesn't exemplify, which doesn't speak to a traditional Julius Randle game for the entirety of the 2022-2023 season, where he's shooting, 2 for 10 from three. That is not indicative of a normal Julius Randle game, but yet and still the Knicks won by 20. So if you're Cleveland, you got to be concerned because, chances are Julius Randle will, get his touch back. IQ might get his touch back. And so if one of them play up to the back of their basketball card, death
It's
is going to kill you.
yeah, definitely. We will get Cleveland's best punch back. But on that note,
Listen, it's Cleveland, Ohio, and it's not the greatest city in the world, and I've been there way too many times in my life.
Shout out to my guy. That's my guy right there.
yeah,
MB.
shout out. Yeah, we've got the Knicks streets buzzing, right? First time in a decade, the New York Knicks are now up in a series. Stand up. We're playing the better
Wow.
seed. We got depth on our side. New York fans showed out tonight. We're talking about it. CTEJ, smashing that like button. The chat's buzzing. Dominic, salute. Great point. Cleveland is going to live and die with Darius Garland, right? He's been
Yeah.
up, he's been down again. Um, one could say Karis LeVert has had a better series than Darius
Mm.
Garland. Now the heat's going to get turned up on him. Um, what are your thoughts on that?
I mean, the fact that uh, so are we talking Darius Garland or are we talking about
Yeah,
Karis LeVert?
both.
Again, as we talked about before with Buzzer's question, the rolled
Mm,
ankles, the sprained ankles, that's going to be a concern. Again, if you were paying attention to Darius Garland getting worked on for the amount of time that he was, and I think the sideline reporter mentioned that they had to change sneakers, and it was kind of awkward to what would be the point of changing sneakers if there were an ankle issue. That's something to pay attention to. That to me is a major concern. If you're Cleveland, obviously I'm not a Cleveland fan. If I were, I'd be wearing Cleveland swag. Uh, so that might actually benefit us because what seems to be a pattern is that when Donovan Mitchell is the focal point of the offense. When he is getting up shots, when he's shooting more than 20, 25 shots, it's great. He'll have an amazing performance. It doesn't necessarily always translate into them winning. So far in this series against the Knicks, and that's including the regular season. With regards to Karis LeVert, I'm just gonna call it and just say it. I cannot imagine Karis LeVert having the kind of performance that he had with tonight again on Sunday afternoon. Um, but
I'd
that
be kind of
speaks,
okay, even if he did, because that kind of means that the others are getting less usage.
yeah, yeah, and that's also going to be indicative of what that means for the bench. Like if you take a
Mm.
look at Cleveland's bench stats tonight rather, um, if you want to find a spot where Cleveland lost this game, what was the major bench contribution? I mean, seriously, like once you pull Karis LeVert and he's now part of your starting roster, your starting unit, what what are you really getting in terms of your bench contribution? And that's where again, and CT's been talking about this all the time. The Knicks' greatest asset is their depth. And so when you look at tonight's production,
Don't forget about
nah,
Danny Green. Remember,
yeah,
they dusted off Danny Green. It looked pretty for one night, but
yeah,
over the course of a series,
he's gonna
he's
get
calling
exposed.
upon Danny Green gonna win you a series. I mean, it was only a matter of time before either Grimes, RJ, or Quickly stepped up. And I think a lot of Cleveland fans. I was watching a lot of Cleveland content, and
Hmm.
I shout out everyone on their grind and delivering good content. But I completely disagreed with it because typical analysis of people who don't watch the Knicks regularly. You know, they were saying, "Oh, the Knicks have nothing else they could call upon." They basically thought we had used up all our ammo, and I'm like,
Yeah,
man, have you not watched the Knicks?
no,
RJ stunk it up every game. Grimes couldn't catch a break. We haven't seen Quickly yet. Tonight we basically saw everyone, and together at MSG we saw how nice that can look. Now, now let's see how they can adjust. But let me ask you now, EJ, in the chat, were you surprised they did not trap Jalen Brunson? Because that seemed to work.
I think I think that's the conundrum that they're in right now. Is you can trap Jalen Brunson, but remember Jalen Brunson really started to explode second half. So do you double? Do you trap Jalen Brunson and
Mm,
allow for RJ to continue to eat the way he was, particularly in the first half? And this is where the idea of the analysis of the series with regards to like Cleveland having the best player but not necessarily have the most rounded roster from top to bottom from 1 to 15. This is where it becomes kind of problematic. So
yeah.
yes, you trap Jalen Brunson. Jalen Brunson is a really smart player. He's a really
Oh,
intelligent
yeah.
player. He's a really and even if they had trapped him, tonight just seemed to be the kind of night where someone was going to step up. For example, let's this is a guy I really like. Let's shout out Obi. You know, Obi had a kind of game where you know you could have trapped Jalen Brunson, but if Jalen Brunson's playing minutes with Obi and IQ, and Obi's playing the way that he did tonight,
Yeah.
does that make a big difference?
8 points in 15 minutes.
Yeah,
And we kind of forget about that.
yeah,
Cleveland would
very
love
easy.
that production, 8 points and a 3 of 8, 15 minutes off the bench, 1 assist, 4 steals for Obi, 4 steals
Yo, dude, 4 steals. I mean, and that's what I'm
and a
saying. It's like,
block.
yeah, like we kind of when we look at the bench production, that was huge. So that's why, the idea of trapping Jalen, that can solve a temporary issue, but the amount of energy that was
Yeah,
being, outputted tonight with several players, including someone like Obi, who, like, when you looked at his defensive energy tonight, whoa,
Mm.
like, who the heck was this? You know, he didn't leak out as much as he typically would do. And so you saw him grab a couple of boards. Obviously, we would always want some more, but you know, it was it was a top to bottom effort, and that's why if you're Cleveland, you should be concerned.
Yep. And we got back to rebounding. Let's shout out, as well as we continue to shout out our role guys, but Mitchell Robinson was an
Hmm.
absolute enforcer tonight with
Yeah,
5 offensive rebounds, 7 total, 3 assists, 2 steals with 2 blocks, plus 19, missed 3 free throws as well. 30 minutes, perfect, 3 of 5. And Isaiah Hartenstein, 3 of 5 also from the field in 18 minutes, with 5 rebounds, 2 steals, and a block and an assist. So
yeah,
they weren't getting much out of Jarrett Allen and Mobley tonight because our bigs, as I
yeah.
thought they would feel comfortable at MSG.
Yo, bro, there's something else that we have to consider. You know, like
Mm,
when you mentioned Hartenstein, and by the way, you know what I loved about Hartenstein's play tonight is that, you know, in terms of his offensive production, it wasn't just the fact that he was really efficient. It was also the emotional weight of some of his offensive plays. Some of those dunks were soul
mm.
crushers.
Oh,
You could see it in terms of Cleveland's willingness to like get back. There was like a,
yeah,
oh, well, this game's kind of over. And like you could see like there's a stretch in the third quarter, actually early fourth quarter, where you could kind of feel like there were stretches where they're like just walking and going through the motions. Was give the appearance of trying to win this game, but it was pretty clear that they couldn't do it. But the other point I wanted to get into really quickly, speaking of Hartenstein,
yeah,
did you check out the minutes?
yeah.
So Cleveland's starting minutes versus our starting minutes. Very fascinating.
Huge, huge difference. I mean, we're basically splitting a lot of minutes. Josh
Yeah.
Hart, 29 minutes off the bench, quickly with 23 minutes off the bench. Um, we even were able to play obviously Derrick Rose and dudes resting, and health is going to be a big factor in this series. I feel as the
Yeah.
longer it goes, and I'm really happy that Josh Hart's ankle looked solid. He was hustling like
Yeah.
he always hustles. He didn't look hampered. Maybe Julius Randle was slightly hampered, but and the chat made a great point. We're not even relying on Julius Randle,
Yes.
whereas
Yeah.
they really can't. Can they win a game if Donovan Mitchell doesn't play well? Can, can have Cleveland proven that they can win a game if Donovan Mitchell does not play well? The Knicks have proven they can win a game if Randle doesn't play well. They've proven they can win a
Yeah.
game if Jalen Brunson doesn't play well. And talk about home court advantage now. It's sitting well and truly in our grasp because one more game at the Mecca, up 2 games to one, feel good vibes. Um, man, this is what makes me happy, man. This is fun. I texted you.
Yeah.
Um, we're not used to this, and it's still stressful, but
Yeah.
man, it's fun. I would not trade this for anything.
Yeah. No, it is a lot of fun, and I think that you know, a few people in the chat have mentioned this before.
Mm.
First off, shout out to everyone. Knicks Buzz. We are buzzing. We are definitely live, and we're definitely enjoying what this is. We're enjoying the fact that we're up 2-1. This is so much better than what we experienced in the Atlanta series a couple of years ago. This feels so great. And again, you know, going back to this idea of uh, this Cleveland team, um, it's interesting to see the lack of balance that exists on the roster. Yeah, JW, this is actually the exact text I was looking at, the exact chat
Yeah,
I was
have
looking
at it.
at. Yeah, it's you're right, JW. This is not a balanced team. And you can see this in terms of the minutes that were allocated tonight.
Mm.
You know, we normally get on Thibodeau for his minutes,
Mm.
but when you look at our minutes and how they were allocated versus how Bickerstaff allocated his minutes, it's night and day. It's night and day, and
Yeah.
that might play a factor for game four. To have some of your players playing 32, 33 minutes in a blowout game, and they're going to have to come back off of a day's rest, rehab, icing, stretching, plyometrics, all that stuff. You know, this is going to be really fascinating.
Yeah. We mentioned also, fan before the series, how inexperienced Cleveland is as well. We're sort of going through this both together. And a great topic about Dominic's talking about Donovan freaking out.
Yeah.
That's interesting because I wanted to say this before. We saw Donovan very vocal after game 2, trying to rally the team, saying what to expect at MSG. I'm going to focus. I'm ready for this moment. Well, man, I don't think they were ready for this storm that hit
Yeah.
Cleveland tonight. Words are cheap. It's easier to say, yeah, we're going to be
Yeah.
ready. We know what it's going to be like, right? We'll start the game well. We'll get the crowd out of it. But it's one thing to execute when we do start well and the crowd is into it. Can Evan Mobley, Jared Allen, can they step up on the road? That's the big question. And I said it after game 1. We stole that game, and that may ultimately be what wins us the series, because that
Yeah.
was the first feeling out game with no adjustments, and it was a big, big win. What are your thoughts on your Dominic comment about Mitchell?
Dom, Dominic, shout out to you, man. Shout out to you. That's a great, great point. The analogy I can think of is, you remember Boston like 3 or 4 seasons ago, when Jalen Brown and Jason Tatum was like on the ascent. And, we were talking about them being really good players, but they just didn't seem to have the ability to, if memory serves me correctly, to have that ability to
Mm,
bust through like the playoff vibe, that playoff intensity. And it took them a
mm,
while to actually do it. It wasn't like, within the first couple of years they were able to become the Boston that we look at now, and to some extent that we fear, the Boston that we consider to be part of the upper echelon of the Eastern Conference. And maybe in part it might be where Cleveland is, where that you have some talented players, but that mental ability, the mental aptitude for the playoffs, they just don't have it yet. And it might be that they never even get it, um, that they might be a regular season team, kind of how, like, Coach Thibodeau, people call him a regular season coach. This might be a regular season team that, the makeup just isn't there
mm,
for it to be a serious, serious playoff contender. It's just going to have a really phenomenal all world talent, a really great, intriguing talent in Darius Garland, but it just doesn't have
mm.
what it needs for it to be a serious playoff team.
Yeah, exactly. To your point, I think the Knicks. One thing Tom Thibodeau would have known, but with the Josh Hart acquisition, is we knew he's the kind of player for the playoffs. I
Hmm.
think the playoffs come down to which team has as many dependable, playable players in the playoffs, right? To your point, you can look great in the regular season playing Dean Wade, Ricky Rubio,
Yeah,
uh, these kind of guys, but are they built for the playoffs, which is
yeah,
completely different? And we're finding that out. We found that out in game 2. You know,
yeah.
we were asking serious questions. Which New York Knicks are playable? Stephen A.
Hmm.
Smith, who I don't always talk about or reference, he was slanderous on RJ Barrett, saying he needs to sit the whole. I don't know if he's dependable on this series. Whereas that's what I spoke about earlier. I think it was an overreaction without having seen a game at MSG.
Yeah,
Uh, any young player on the road can look shook. Um,
yeah,
but
yeah.
yeah, to my point about getting that Josh Hart acquisition, EJ, that was just another player we knew was dependable in the playoffs. Even though he hadn't played a playoff game, was I think Cleveland are going, if they ultimately lose this series, they're going to have to go back to the drawing board to find more pieces.
Yeah, I've mentioned this a bunch of times during the season, and during the playoffs rather,
Mm,
and even when we talked about the start of the predictions, and I mentioned how if Cleveland loses this series, and obviously we're a long ways away from that. We don't know yet. We have a few games before we get there. But it's going to be fascinating to see what they have to do or what they can do to improve this team. And obviously, as a Knicks fan, I don't really care, but I do in that what one team does
It's a
have
good
an
lesson.
impact. It is. It's a really good lesson in terms of organizational structure,
Yeah.
how you're going to build a roster, and what you're willing to do and what you shouldn't be willing to do to build a real championship contender. Um, Obviously, I
Because
want. Yeah, go ahead, bro.
yeah, I'll throw it back to you because don't just think we're just going to be done with Cleveland after this series. It's
Oh
going to
no,
be
no,
next year. It's going to be the year
it's the
after that.
rivalry.
It's just
Yeah.
yeah, this is we're battling the top four teams in the East now. Yep, go ahead.
Yeah, and I think that's what's going to be really fascinating is that, like I've said before several times on the show, what can
Mm.
Cleveland do? You know, when you've really poured a number of your assets into the Donovan Mitchell acquisition, what real substantive move can you make that will catapult you into serious championship contender status? Um, in some ways, this kind of also reminds me of Atlanta.
Mm.
Atlanta had that great run in
Yep.
2001, in 2021 rather, and they've kind of been stuck in this weird position of, okay, so what's the move we need to make to be able to ascend into serious playoff championship contender? And it doesn't seem to have materialized quite yet. You know, obviously, there's still a ways to go with the series that they're in right now, but this is always like the cautionary tale in terms of how do you construct rosters, what should you be willing to give up, and for whom. Not to revisit Donovan Mitchell, because obviously that's water under the bridge. It's already a fait accompli. But it's really more of a question of when we have our final autopsy on this next season, and we're all getting giddy, we're all getting excited for next season because of how well we can imagine this next roster can do. We have to remember the lessons that should be learned from Cleveland if ultimately we do beat them.
Yeah, man. Like there's just so many learning lessons. So a lot
Mhm.
of these players are first foray into the playoffs. Yet the chat continues to buzz. We'll look at some post game quotes and we'll continue rocking out after this huge win. Uh, Mitchell Robinson said after the game to Steph Bondy, uh, when asked if the Cavs players were hesitant to go to the cup, he says, "You saw that. They got shook up." And then Mitch
Mm,
grabbed his arms like he was shivering. Man,
yeah,
love the characters on this team, man. I think the vibes aren't always immaculate, but I just think we got a we got a nice group of guys, and I think
yeah.
we get through this series. Who knows what's going to happen with Giannis and the Bucks? I'm going to have so much fun in that series. If we get there.
Yeah, I remember, I distinctly remember our preseason predictions. It was you, it was me, it was Berman, and we talked about how this might be Milwaukee and Philadelphia's time to win that
Mm.
championship, and if it doesn't happen, particularly for Philadelphia, it might all implode. So I think Philadelphia is definitely a story of that it might come to fruition what we were talking about at the start of the season. But the interesting thing with regards to Milwaukee, if we in fact do advance, um, uh, Milwaukee is interesting because like let's take a Chris Middleton. Chris Middleton's like
Mm.
one of those players like you can just always imagine is like a walking medical chart that you know game one something might twist, something might hurt, something might so that's what's really fascinating about this year's NBA season is that this seems to be more open than it has been for more than a decade, maybe even a decade and a half, close to a decade and a half, where we're going back to before the Heat.
Yep.
So this is what this is. I think this that adds to the energy that we're feeling this
Oh,
season as Knicks fans.
no doubt, man. Talking about energy, man. The scenes on Twitter right now. You got Alan Hahn saying absolute mayhem. A whole block shut down.
Hmm.
We've got the same dudes, the Bing Bong guy, and crazy man. I'm just happy to see Knicks fans enjoy this. Josh Hart tweets out RJ MF Barrett in support. We had Jared Allen, the game worst, -26 after the loss. He says, "I don't want to put it on the guards. It's not their fault."
Yeah.
So, what do you think should be the New York Knicks approach to Game 4? And then we'll talk about Cleveland if there's anything. But just from what you can think of now, what would you like to see the approach be heading into Game 4, knowing that there's a short turnaround?
I think that there are, and shout out to, I think it was JW who mentioned how the Knicks have been playing long minutes pretty much the entire season, and they seem to have a different wind about them. They seem to have a different energy about them. I think
Yep.
that the three points, like, I'll pull a Clyde, a Walt Clyde Frazier, and focus on 3 points. Number one, if I were the Knicks, I would really, really try to, point number one, get Julius to have a Julius first quarter. That would be my focal point the
Oh
first
yeah,
quarter.
great
If
point.
he can find a rhythm first quarter, that adds a different dimension to the game. I think that Cleveland has had the ability. Um, yeah, he does, JW. I think that Cleveland has had the ability, particularly with Jarrett Allen and Evan Mobley, to drop off, to sag a little bit, and not necessarily come all the way out to the perimeter because Julius has not had the prototypical 2022, 2023 Julius first quarter. If you can
Mm,
get Julius going, that changes a lot. It confuses, it confounds Cleveland's defense because now all of a sudden the offensive strategy that they initially made, the defensive strategy rather, that they may have had, it gets tossed out the window. Secondly, um, emphasis on ensuring that RJ Barrett plays another efficient
yes,
game. Um,
nice.
if that could take place
And good
where you have
defense.
a good defense, boy, game four will be,
Yep. They'll smell blood
oh yeah,
if the crowd gets into it. That's when
yes,
Cleveland's going to face nothing they've ever
yeah,
faced, a
yeah.
tidal wave.
If RJ is going to play with confidence and efficiently,
Yeah.
last but not least, my third point of emphasis is if you can get IQ when RJ and IQ are on the floor at the
Oof.
same time for that second unit to really be able to prolong the devastating nature of what that second unit had been for several weeks.
Yep.
It will expose, it will destroy, it will rattle Cleveland's second unit. And game 4 will become sharks in water.
Oh,
And if that takes place, I think those three things could really be key to the Knicks really finding their groove for game 4 and, really taking a stranglehold on the series. Much to the surprise of someone like myself. Yeah. So I'd really hope that those three things, and if two of those three things take place, I think that it could go a long way to proving that the Knicks have a chance to take a stranglehold on the series. What
yeah,
about you,
I
CT?
agree. Man, you hit EJ. I agree with everything you said. Also, I think we should get back or continue tonight's ball movement. It wasn't always good, but 21 assists. I want to shout out that. That's an improvement on the series. That's our series high, 21 assists. 5 guys in double figures. Let let's beat them in as a team effort. Um, the moment we try to key in on Randle or Brunson, it's going to play into their hands. And to your point, I think IQ is going to get loose. If Grimes plays, he might have that huge game where he hits a few threes. Barrett continues to be that guy they forget about, and tonight he made them pay. I think that was the big counter move tonight. I don't know if Bickerstaff or the Cavs thought RJ Barrett would give them what they did, because even our own fans, like Stephen A.
Mm-hmm.
Smith and people, were turning on him. So I think Cleveland would have just thought, let's laugh that off. But no, tonight Barrett got to the cup like they forgot.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
Mm.
and that's what the piece that we talk about a lot, the depth. It's a game
Ooh.
changer. It's a game changer because what it does is that if Bickerstaff knows that he's not getting much from his bench, but you can play and you can stretch RJ's minutes into the second unit because he's playing efficiently, he's playing confidently, and he's playing minutes in with the second unit, and you have
Mm.
an IQ who's clicking. All of a sudden, Bickerstaff has a dilemma on his hands. He has a major dilemma on his hands because he knows he can't play Ricky Rubio extended minutes. He knows that he can't necessarily play Isaac Okoro extended minutes because he hasn't gotten much from him. And so all of a sudden, he's left now with this question of, well, who am I going to roll out there? And RJ is going off, and IQ is feeling the sense of confidence with the second unit. And, we've seen a constriction. We've seen Thibodeau kind of the first couple of games, he limited the minutes of the second unit a little bit. But if RJ and IQ are clicking,
Mm.
you might see him revert back to what the minutes were like, or closer to what the minutes were like towards the end of the season. And so that then, like, it creates a whole series of issues for Cleveland that I don't know if they can resolve, given the somewhat short nature of their roster.
Yeah. And when they trapped Brunson in game 2, we weren't moving the ball nowhere near fast enough or better enough. But at home, they've obviously had 2 days to study, and I think the ball movement tonight was better. The players were in better positions, didn't took the right shots, also. And Deuce McBride, Derek Rose, it was just a feel-good story to see guys get minutes. We shouted out Obi in his 15 minutes, 8 points, gave us valuable production. But Josh Hart was really back to his old self. I thought game 2, Josh Hart was the big letdown, but he just
Yeah,
feeds off the MSG vibes.
yeah, yeah,
Josh Hart is that energizer, and man, Barrett is that X factor, like so many
yeah,
people said.
yeah,
EJ. If he gives us 19 points on efficiency, it's looking good.
yeah,
Um,
yeah,
now on the Cleveland side of things, I'm expecting them to try to go back to maybe trapping, maybe add to their rotation. In desperate times, call for desperate measures. I do think we might see less of Danny Green, um, less of Ricky Rubio, more Karis LeVert, of course, uh, but maybe also more Dean Wade, Jetty Osman. But if you're Cleveland, do you just hope and pray that Donovan Spider Mitchell can lift them out of this situation and go off?
I think the prayers that JB Bickerstaff is praying right now is, and if he's talking, he's going to probably assemble his team. Um, I think that he's probably going to assemble his roster, and they're going to have a walkthrough tomorrow. And what
Yep.
he's going to say is, like, you guys did a lot of good stuff. Um, what probably happened, or what he's probably going to say is, a lot of the shots that you normally would hit, you didn't hit. And so if you're JV
Yep.
Bickerstaff, do you just talk about how, listen, the shots that we missed, some of these open shots, if you hit them early and New York struggles offensively like it did in the first quarter, maybe we're talking about a game where we're leaving the first quarter with a lead, and this knocks the Knicks' confidence. And, if you don't have an efficient RJ Barrett, this is a game that Cleveland wins. So maybe the adjustment isn't really necessarily a scheme adjustment. Maybe it's just you're doing the right things. Sometimes you have a night where you're doing the right things, but it just doesn't work out. Just keep on doing the right things. Keep on making sure that you take those open shots. And if you hit 5 more of these open shots, it's a different game.
Yeah, it's going to test the mental approach.
Yeah.
100%. I put an image on screen that the Cavs account tweeted out. Look, Donovan doesn't look too happy. Isaac Okoro barking.
Yeah.
Lot of soul searching on that side. But for here, man, it's all feel good vibes, chat, buzzing. Give us your questions, your thoughts. We'll wrap this up tonight soon. But man, it's been a fun night. Playoff ball
Absolutely.
back at MSG. Uh, with this situation now, this playoff seeding situations opened up. Atlanta won tonight. We see injuries on the Milwaukee side of things. It's going to be the battle, survival of the fittest.
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
I'm just so happy that our role players, EJ, could really show out and have that game at MSG. Don't forget, this is Mitchell Robinson's first playoff game at MSG. Um, who else? Is this Deuce McBride's first
Yeah.
minutes at
Yeah.
MSG? I don't know if he got any minutes last series. Emmanuel quickly, like to see all that doubt over him, after 2 road games, to be a team high, plus 27 tonight, was just a great feel good story. And everyone in the starting unit being in the plus, and to have a blowout win where we don't have to stress. We
Yeah.
didn't need to, I didn't need to hold on to my drink,
Yeah.
shaking. Like Mitchell
Yeah.
Robinson said, the Cavs were shaking.
Yeah.
Was
Yeah.
just good. Good for heading into game 4. I think this is the best possible scenario for tonight. What do you think?
Yeah, I think the fact that we started off and it was a difficult, there were difficult offensive stretches.
Mm,
The fact that both squads, both teams, they're both rosters, they clearly struggled. I think someone mentioned how there were nerves, there were jitters at the beginning of the game. But by the time we get to the third quarter and the Knicks had stretched it out to a double-digit lead and secured a double-digit lead, and to be able to secure and expand upon that lead, this is something that we have not necessarily seen for a bit in Knicks playoff basketball. So to me, it was impressive that they were able to blow out this squad, especially after what was really a frustrating game two.
yeah.
Um, so I'll make this statement again, which I made, I believe, a couple nights ago. The Knicks have won. If we've played 12 quarters, the Knicks have won about 10 quarters, 9.5 quarters of the games that we've played thus far against Cleveland. So I think that's yet another way of looking at it. The Knicks game two didn't really get out of hand until really second quarter, middle of second quarter, all the way through fourth quarter. But the rest of these quarters, the Knicks had really, really frustrated the Cavs. So that's something to really, really be proud of tonight, Knicks Nation.
Yeah, great thoughts as always. And I think we both now agree if we win game 4, as the
It's over.
chat's saying, like J Dub, the series is done. Um, is that your expectation?
I'm not gonna. I'm not. I'm gonna go from the the distinguished Bill Daughtry school of analyzing, not to make predictions, especially because like it's hard because we're so
Yep.
invested in it. You and I are big time Knicks fans. We breathe Knicks, we eat Knicks, we think Knicks, we dream Knicks, and so um, I truly hope that the Knicks do win Game Four, especially because one of the things that if you've been a lifelong Knicks fan, sometimes Sunday afternoon games are a struggle for the Knicks historically. If
Mm.
you look at the past 20 seasons, matinee games, for some reason, New York City catches up with the Knicks. Hopefully, it catches up with Cleveland. Maybe, hopefully, they're thinking they have an off night. They want to get their mind off of game three. They go to One Oak, they go to whatever club, and they have too much of a good time Saturday night. I'm hoping that Julius is home, IQ is home. They're resting. They're watching Beef on Netflix. They're watching something at home, whereas Cleveland is enjoying the time that they're in New York City because who really wants to stay in Cleveland?
Yeah. Yeah, but I like your rational thoughts, because we've been through the tough times, and
Hmm.
it's a situation where it's game at a time. That's wise to respect the opponent.
Hmm.
But yeah, in my personal opinion, I think if we do win game 4, it would not just be a signal of us being up 2 games. It would probably be a signal of us just overcoming, or us being too much for Cleveland to overcome at MSG because we
Yeah,
won game 1.
Yeah.
I think. But what we'll do is, I know it's late on the East Coast, man, and you got to get some early shine in. But I'll keep going. Shout out some of the chat. But give us your final thoughts, man, as we chop this thing up. And we will have another guest on Monday after Game 4.
Oh boy. So Monday?
Yeah.
All right, cool. Final thoughts. Listen, as you guys know, I love Knicks Buzz. I love being part of the Knicks Buzz family. I love all of the people who support Knicks Buzz. Please make sure, as always, to like, support, follow, share what we
Mm.
do in terms of Knicks Buzz. One of the things I love about working with CT is that this is about quality content. Quality content.
Oh yeah.
We try to put up content that you would be proud to show, your mother, your father, your brother, your sister, your husband, your wife, whomever is part of your family, that is good content, is analytical, is logical. We are emotional, but we also want to provide you with that good, heady content. And that's why we also want to provide you guys with quality guests that know the Knicks, that follow the Knicks, that work with the Knicks, that understand the Knicks, that know the Knicks history. So please make sure to support this channel, support your boy CT. Please support EJ as well too. My final thought is this. Um, I think it was Dominic that mentioned this. Who would have thought that we would have been the fifth seed and be up at this point 2 games to 1 against the fourth seed? But here's the other thing I wanted to add on top of this, Dominic. I've been saying this in the entire season, and really at the start of the postseason. This is the beginnings, possibly the beginnings of an exciting period of time. What's up, Geraldine? Um, this is possibly the beginning of a very exciting stretch of time for the New York Knicks. I distinctly remember what it was like in 1996 when we acquired, I believe it was 96, we acquired Chris Childs, Allen Houston, and LJ, Larry Johnson. And I just remember the excitement of, wait,
Mm.
these players want to play with the New York Knicks? Because I remember the moribund, early 1980s, somewhat struggling, like trying to wish that Bernard King and Patrick Ewing had played together. But there was something exciting about 96 where all of a sudden, after having dealt with the frustrations of Charles Smith and the four missed layups against the Chicago Bulls, all of a sudden players wanted to play for the New York Knicks. Chris Childs was one of the Nets' best players. Allen Houston, this young, dynamic player from Detroit, from the Detroit Pistons. Um, there were even rumors that we might possibly get Grant Hill or what have you. Um, I think we're about to hit that stretch again. And if we win this series, who knows? So that's my final thought. Please, everyone, let's enjoy the ride and make sure to hug your loved ones. That's all I got. A shout out to Jay Boog. Yeah, that's it for me.
Hey, man, awesome, man. Let's get it on the next one.
Definitely.
EJ. Chat soon, bud.
Take care, buddy.
Enjoy. Yeah, peace.
Peace.
Man, man. In the words of Ron Cleveland, right? Man, EJ hit on that with the 99 vibes, buzzer beater for the super chats tonight, asking us also, what's the similarities between the 99 team and this one? It's all grittiness, it's all toughness, it's heart. It's a team that reps New York City to a T. And right now, we're buzzing after a huge Game 3 victory, right? Clamping down. Our defense really helped us win tonight, blow it out. And we got valuable contributions from the bench. Young studs stepped up. Manuel Quickly, RJ Barrett was huge in the first quarter tonight. Mitchell Robinson, I mentioned his first playoff game at Madison, right? So happy for him. Jalen Brunson, his first playoff game at MSG. How could I forget? And you see Brunson's chart there. That's what happens when you do not trap Jalen Brunson, right? He's going to kill you. He's going to cut you up. A death by 1,000 cuts tonight. He was 10 of 18. Didn't hit a three ball, but he was living in Brunsonville, like Bill Daughtry was saying, between the restricted area and the foul line. He was straight up dominating. Man, the crowd, the reception for Brunson when he came out was deafening, even on the TV screen. You guys let me know, where did you watch tonight's game? Was it at home with family? Was it out at a party, watch party? Was it at the Garden even tonight, man? It was the hottest ticket in town as the New York Knicks now go up 2-1 against the favorite that was early in the series. Now, the New York Knicks are the favorite, I would say, and we were the underdogs, but I believed, I kept the faith. I said we have a bigger squad, and I think, I was part, out of line also to overreact or criticize some players after 2 road games without having seen them at MSG. We can't forget playoff ball on the road is a different kind of situation. You know, it's tough for the best of players, let alone young role players. And I think as this series goes along, the New York Knicks are just going to shine even more and bright as these guys would feel good now, taking that lead, getting the shackles off and hitting shots, listening to that crowd. Man, this is what a player plays for. Josh Hart, oldest player on the team without a playoff game, right? I'm so happy for him, but he stepped up huge in his 29 minutes. Hit 2 of 2 from deep. Josh Hart, he was 4 of 5 from the field with 6 rebounds, 2 steals, helped us get out in transition, and that was key. Fast break points, 15-7. Knicks dominated. Points in the paint, 56-48. Dominated. A 27-point lead, the biggest lead of the game, dominate. Turnovers, 14 to Cleveland's 20 turnovers. We ramped it up a notch. Cleveland was not ready, right? I thought our pick and roll defense was on point, using Emmanuel quickly at the point of attack, making it difficult. And the switching was quick. The rotations were quicker tonight. And like we expected, man, we made it so much more difficult for the likes of Karis LeVert, Darius Garland to get comfortable, right? They even changed the nets on them tonight, as Clyde was talking about in the broadcast. Clyde in playoff form. It's interesting, yeah, they did change the nets on them, but 99 points. Who would have thought that would get you a 20-point blowout? Only scoring 99 points. If I told people the Knicks scored 99 tonight, I think a lot of people would have been worried. But that's how much our defense showed up to keep the Cavaliers to the franchise lowest halftime score in the playoffs, I think 32 points. And to finish not even scoring 80 points lets you know that there's a lot of talk and a lot of buzz and soul searching going to be going on in Cleveland as we head into a huge Game 4, the biggest game for the New York Knicks in over a decade. Like the chat keeps saying, keep it buzzing. Huge, right? If the Knicks win Game 4, it's a wrap, basically. We need to get them. Brunson says, yeah, we'll get them on Sunday. Our bench will play even better than they did today. Yep, I feel the same way. I really do. I think the confidence will be great. As long as we move the ball, I think we'll be sitting pretty. I really do. 21 assists tonight was solid, but we got to keep moving the ball. I thought RJ Barrett hit the shots he needed to hit early, but capitalized on their bad defense. I'm going to say we were able to get into the paint tonight. Their plan did not work, as we see Brunson, right, shot chart on screen, and I'll bring up RJ's chart on the screen as well. We can salute RJ. There we saw his 3 makes from deep, 3 misses, but encouraging that he hit 2 from the top of the key, and then all his looks in the restricted area. He was living and breathing and eating in the restricted area. Was Rowan Barrett, 10 of 18. So I know that's Brunson. Barrett was 8 of 12, 3 of 6 from deep, 8 rebounds, 2 offensive, with 3 assists and a steal. and a plus 10, 19 points. So yeah, that's our role player stepping up to help us get this dub. And I don't really know what kind of adjustments we can expect outside of what I said to EJ from the Cleveland side of things. I think they're definitely probably not going to play Ricky Rubio. Um, Now, will they play Caris LeVert big minutes? I think they have to. I really think they have to. But who else can they turn to? Do we see less of Danny Green? Perhaps more of Dean Wade? I think that's going to be very, very, very interesting. My prediction still stands up to this day. I predicted Knicks in 6, and it's looking pretty good right now. Knicks still have the edge. We had the edge before tonight, and we have an even bigger edge going into game 4. Knicks in 6. I think we win game 4. I think we get Cleveland's best punch game 5, and then a raucous Madison Square Garden on game 6 seals the deal. Right, we do have a nice blueprint to slow down Spider and Garland, I think. And I think the nice defensive adjustments from Tibbs was excellent tonight. Again, I reference our perimeter defense, Emmanuel Quickly. I think the switching and the rotations were a lot better. But of course, Cleveland didn't hit shots, but we also made it difficult for them to hit those shots. It's not just Cleveland missing shots. Our defense was solid tonight. We saw Derrick Rose buzzer beater, said it gave him goosebumps. Me too. Who would have thought we would have seen Derrick Rose tonight getting 3 minutes? Couldn't hit a shot, but Derrick Rose getting out there, throwing that alley-oop to Obi Toppin for the emphatic exclamation mark on tonight's festivities. I'm going to say it was a party. That was key. But yeah, Emmanuel Quickly's two-way play is exactly what has made this season a success for him. But he did miss out on the Sixth Man of the Year award. So I think he referenced that as something that's motivating to Quick, and it's something that he's going to take into the off season and drive him even more. I thought he was very, very deserving of winning the Sixth Man of the Year, and I do think that Malcolm Brogdon was lucky to win that one. I think Quickly had a much better season overall, finish to the year in terms of being an impactful six man on his team, right? I think Boston's a very, very good team, but they remain a very good team without Brogdon. Also, we relied on Emmanuel Quickly a heck of a lot, right, to win. But it also goes back to the mantra, man, next man up. It's been like that all season. Josh Hart, Quickly, Hartenstein, Obi, Deuce, the usual suspects tonight. Really, we were a squad with 5 players scoring double digits. Right, that's a handful for the Cleveland Cavaliers. That's an absolute handful for them. And look, in terms of what worked for them in game 2, it's easy to do that on the road. We've seen it tonight how difficult it is to play against the energy in the crowd. But trapping Brunson was something that worked in one game, but doesn't necessarily mean it's going to work in the next game. The playoffs are all about game to game and adjusting. But overall, the best team will always win because the best squad over the sum of 7 games will deliver. And I think, as I said, we as the series goes, the New York Knicks' depth will become a bigger factor in here. We saw JB Cleveland go to their adjustment in game 2, right, with Danny Green, Caris LeVert 39 minutes. What's he got now? Who else is he going to dust off? Ricky Rubio was poor tonight. Caris LeVert tried his best, but that still wasn't enough. 79 points. Like I said to EJ, we can expect another big game from Spider. I think most definitely we will. But is that going to be enough? Darius Garland has been so up and down. He cannot afford another game like this. Otherwise, it's lights out. I think so. There's going to be a lot of pressure on Cleveland's backcourt with that situation. But again, our defense stepping up like it always has this season has been huge. And I think, the crowd carried us with that situation. Uh, our strength, the rebounding all over again. We had Mitchell Robinson, 5 offensive rebounds, huge. Barrett with 2 as well. But our defensive rebounding, Julius Randle still pulled in 8. Brunson pulled in 4 defensive rebounds. Mitch with 7 total. Barrett with 8. Grimes with 2. Toppin with 3. Hart with 5. Josh Hart with 6 rebounds total. So, our strength all season and our identity is not going away, right? We're an amazing rebounding team, the 3rd in the league, and that's a handful for Cleveland, right? If they're going to have to win another game, they're going to have to out-rebound us, I feel. So, that's Barrett's chart. Again, Brunson just been our MVP all season, and as long as he's getting into the paint, right, getting those kind of looks, it was just a great return, man. He was hitting amazing step backs, pivoting, up and under moves. Look at him. Look how pumped he looks on the screen there. Man, Jalen Brunson's first playoff win at MSG. This is why he chose the New York Knicks. And with that said, we'll get ready to wrap this big show up. Post-game, live with CTEJ. The streets are buzzing right now. Smashing that like button for the New York Knicks. Big time win. Series lead. Momentum shifts to the city that never sleeps. Let the party, let the celebrations continue into the night. There's a short turnaround though, so that's going to be big. It's going to be big, right? More depth, more things in our favor. Salute Ryan, Sanger, prayers bless up out here. Hope Quentin Grimes, we need you still. Hopefully that shoulder is good, just a contusion. He might sit out a game, but we got the horses to win this series now. And one may dare to think about what's next with the Milwaukee Bucks. If we can close the deal in Game 4, that's what's going to be big, man. Had fun tonight. Shout out to all the diehards, Knicks Nation, new generation fans, OGs, worldwide. They did us proud. Did the 1999 Knicks proud, 94 Knicks proud, the 72 Knicks proud, and the best is yet to come. I feel like a lot of our guys can have better games and step up. We'll be there to cover it next game. Salute. We'll be there Sunday after the game, post game as well. Monday, another guest coming through. We'll be talking about it. Salute, salute, salute. Go New York, go.